Guys, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we will be reading chapter 3 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So chapter 3, The Letters from No One. The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry's longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holidays had started, and Dudley had already broken his new video camera, crashed his remote control airplane, and first time out on his racing bike, knocked down old Mrs. Figg as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visited the house every single day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all big and stupid, but as Dudley was the biggest and stupidest of the lot, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This is why Harry spent so much time as possible out of the house, wandering around, thinking about the end of the holidays, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school for the first time in his life. He wanted to be with Dudley. Dudley had been accepted at Uncle Ron's old private school. Smeltings, Piers, Puckles was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High, the local public school. Dudley thought this was very funny. They stuffed people's heads down a toilet the first day at Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor toilets never had anything as horrible as her head down it. It might be sick. Then he ran before Dudley could work out what he'd said. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his smelting uniform. Leaving Harry at Mrs. Figg's, Mrs. Figg wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping over one of her cats, and she didn't seem quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she'd had it for several years. That evening, Dudley paraded around the living room for his family's brand new uniform. Smelting boys wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbottoms, and flat straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobbly sticks used for hitting each other while teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later life. As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbottoms, Uncle Ron said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and said she couldn't believe that her icky Duddlykins was going to look so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak, though the thought of two of his ribs might already have cracks from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen the next morning. When Harry went in for breakfast, it seemed to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. He went to have a look, and the tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in gray water. What's this? He asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened as always. Did he dare to ask a question? Your new school uniform, she said. Harry looked at the bowl again. Oh, he said. I didn't realize it had to be so wet. Don't be stupid, Aunt Petunia snapped. I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old things gray for you. It'll look like everyone else's when I'm finished. Harry seriously doubted this, but I thought it was better not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High. He was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Ron came in, both with wrinkled noses because of the smell from Harry's new uniform. Uncle Ron opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged his smelting stick, which he carried everywhere on the table. They heard the click of the mail slot and the flop of letters on the floor. Get the mail, Dudley, said Uncle Ron from behind the paper. Make Dudley get it. Make Harry get it. Get the mail, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley. Harry dodged the smelting stick and went to go get the mail. 3 things lay on the doormat. A postcard from Uncle Ron's sister Marge, who was vacationing on the Isles, with a brown envelope that looks like a bill, and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared, his heart twinkling like a giant elastic band. No one ever in his whole life had written to him. Who would it be? He had no friends, no other relatives. He didn't belong to the library. So he'd never gotten even a rude note for asking him for books back. Yet here it was, a letter addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Whining Survey. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment paper. The address was written in emerald green ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over in his hand, trembling, he saw a purple wax seal bearing the coat of his arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake surrounded the large letter H. "Hurry up, boy!" shouted Uncle Ron from the kitchen. What are you doing? Checking for letter bombs?" He chuckled at his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Ron the bill, the postcard, and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. Uncle Ron ripped open the bill and snorted in disgust and flipped over the postcard. "Marge is ill," he informed Petunia. "Ada finally woke." "Dad," said Dudley suddenly. "Dad, Harry's got something." Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, which was written on the same heavy parchment paper as the envelope, when it was jerked sharply out of his hand by Uncle Ron. "That's mine," said Harry, trying to snatch it back. "Who'd be writing to you, Uncle?" sneered Uncle Ron, shaking the letter open with one hand and glancing at it. His fingers went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights. It didn't stop there. Within seconds, it was a grayish-white of old porridge. "Petunia," he gasped. Dudley tried to grab the letter and read it, but Uncle Ron held it high out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took it with curiosity and read the first line. For a moment, she looked like she might faint. Then she clutched her throat, making choking noise. "Veron, oh my God, Veron!" They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the head with his smelting stick. "I want to read the letter," he said. "I want to read the letter," fiercely, as it's mine." "Get out, both of you," croaked Uncle Ron, stuffing the letter back inside his envelope. Harry didn't move. "I want my letter," he shouted. "Let me see it," demanded Dudley. "Out," Uncle Ron roared, as he took both Harry and Dudley by the scruffs of their neck and threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Harry and Dudley promptly had a furious silent fight over who would listen to the key. Dudley won, so Harry, his glasses dangling from one ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen at the crack between the door and floor. "Ron," Aunt Petunia was saying in a quiet, very voice, "look at the address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house? Watching, smiling, might be following us," muttered Uncle Ron. "But what should we do, Ron? Should we write back? Tell them we don't want?" Harry could see Uncle Ron's shiny black boots pacing up and down the kitchen. "No," he said finally. "We'll ignore it. And if they don't get an answer, yes, that's better. We won't do anything, but I'm not having this one in the house, Petunia. Didn't we swear when we took him in that we'd stamp out that dangerous nonsense?" That evening, he got back from work. Uncle Ron did something he'd never done before. He visited Harry's in his cupboard. "Where's my letter?" said Harry, almost the moment Uncle Ron had squeezed through the door. "Who's writing to me?" "No one. It was addressed to you by mistake," said Uncle Ron shortly. I have burned it." "It was not a mistake," said Harry angrily. "It had my cupboard on it." "Silence!" yelled Uncle Ron. A couple spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and forced his face into a smile, which looked quite painful. Yes, Harry, about this cupboard, your aunt and I have been thinking. You're getting a bit big for it. I'm thinking it might be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom. Why? Don't ask questions, snapped his uncle. Now take this stuff upstairs now. The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Ron and Aunt Petunia, one for visitors, usually Uncle Ron's sister Marge. One where Dudley slept, and one where Dudley kept all the toys and things that wouldn't fit into his first bedroom. It only took Harry one trip upstairs to move everything he owned from his cupboard to his room. He sat down on the bed, stared around him. Nearly everything here was broken. A month of video camera lying on top of a small working tank. Dudley had once driven over the door of the next door neighbor's dog. In the corner was Dudley's first ever television set, which he put his foot through when his favorite program had been canceled. There was a large birdcage, which had once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped at school for a real air rifle, which was up on the shelf with the end of all bent because Dudley had sat on it. Other shelves were full of books. They were the only things in the room that looked like they had never been touched. From downstairs came the sound of Dudley bawling at his mother. I don't want him there. I need that room. Make him get out. Harry sighed and stretched out on the bed. Yesterday he had been given anything to be up here. Today he'd rather be back in his cupboard with that letter there than up here without it. Later at breakfast, the next morning at breakfast, everyone was rather quiet. Dudley was in shock. He screamed and walked his father with his smelting stick. Been sick on purpose, kicked his mother, thrown his tortoise through the greenhouse roof, and he still didn't have his room back. Harry was thinking about this time yesterday, and bitterly wishing he had opened the letter in the hall. Uncle Ron and Aunt Petunia kept looking at each other darkly. When the mail arrived, Uncle Ron, who seemed to be trying to be nice to Harry, made Dudley go get him. They heard him bang things with his smelting stick all the way down the hall. Then he shouted, "There's another one! Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, 4 Privet Drive." With a strangled cry, Uncle Ron left from his seat and ran down the hall. Harry right behind him. Uncle Ron had to wrestle Dudley to the ground to get the letter from him, which was made difficultly by the fact that Harry had grabbed Uncle Ron around on the neck from behind. After a minute of confused fighting, in which everyone got hit a lot by the smelting stick, Uncle Ron straightened up, gasping for his breath, with Harry's letter clutched in his hand. "Go to your cupboard, your bedroom," he wheezed at Harry. "Dudley, go, just go." Harry walked around and around his new room. Someone knew he had moved out of his cupboard, and they seemed to know he hadn't received his first letter. Surely they meant they'd try again. At this time, he'd make sure they didn't fail, and he had a plan. The repaired alarm clock rang at 6 o'clock the next morning. Harry turned it off quickly and dressed silently. He must not wake the Dursleys. He stole downstairs without turning on any of the lights. He was going to wait for the postman on the corner of Privet Drive and get the letters for number 4 first. His heart hammered as he crept across the dark hall to the door. Harry leapt into the air. He had been trodden alive by something big and squishy on the doormat. Something alive. The lights clicked on upstairs. To his horror, Harry realized the big squashy thing had been his uncle's face. Uncle Ron had been lying at the foot of the front door in the sleeping bag, clearly making sure that Harry didn't do exactly what he'd been trying to do. He shouted at Harry for about half an hour, then told him to go make a cup of tea. Harry shuffled off miserably into the kitchen. By the time he got back, the mail had arrived, right into Uncle Ron's lap. Harry could see the 3 letters addressed in green ink. "I want," he began, but Uncle Ron was tearing the letters into pieces right before his eyes. Uncle Ron didn't go to work that day. He stayed at home and nailed up the mail slot. See, he explained to Aunt Petunia through a mouthful of nails. If they can't deliver them, then they'll just give up. I'm not sure that'll work, Ron. All these people's minds work in strange ways, Petunia. They're not like you and me, said Uncle Ron, trying to knock in a nail with a piece of fruitcake Aunt Petunia had just brought him. On Friday, no less than 12 letters had arrived for Harry. As they couldn't go through the mail slot, they had been pushed under the door, slotted through the sides, and even a few forced through the small window in the downstairs bedroom. Uncle Ron stayed at home again. After burning all the letters, he got out a hammer and nails and boarded up the cracks around the front and back doors, so no one could go out. He hummed tiptoe through the tulips as he worked and jumped at a small noise. On Saturday, things began to get out of hand. 24 letters to Harry found their way into the house, rolled up, hidden in each side of 2 dozen eggs. That their very confused milkman had handed Aunt Petunia through the living room window, while Uncle Ron had made furious telephone calls to the post office and the dairy, trying to find someone to complain to. Aunt Petunia shredded the letters in her food processor. Who on earth wants to talk to you this badly? Dudley asked Harry in his amazement. On Sunday morning, Uncle Ron sat down at the breakfast table looking tired and rather ill but happy. No post on Sundays, he reminded them cheerfully as he spread and murmured on his newspaper. No damn letters today. Something came whizzing down the kitchen chimney as he spoke, which caught him sharply on the back of the head. Next morning, 30 or 40 letters came pelting down the fireplace like bullets. The Dursley tried to duck, but Harry leapt into the air trying to catch one. Out! Out! Uncle Ron seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall. When Aunt Petunia and Dudley had run out with their arms over their faces, Uncle Ron slammed the door shut. They could hear the letters still streaming down the room, bouncing off the walls and house. That does it, said Uncle Ron, trying to speak calmly but pulling a great turf out of his mustache. At the same time, I want you all back here in 5 minutes, ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes, no arguments. He looks so dangerous with half his mustache missing as no one dared to argue. 10 minutes later, they all rushed their way through the boarded-up doors and were in the car, speeding towards the highway. Dudley was sniffling in the back seat. His father had hit him around the head for holding them up. We tried to pack his television, VCR, and computer in a sports bag. They drove and drove. Even Aunt Petunia didn't dare ask where they were going. Every now and then, Uncle Ron would take a sharp turn and drive the opposite direction for a while. Shake him off, he would mutter whenever he did this. He didn't stop to eat or drink all day. By nightfall, Dudley was howling. He'd never had such a bad day in his life. He was hungry. He'd missed 5 television programs, and he waited to see. And he'd never gone so long without blowing up an alien on his computer. Uncle Ron stopped at last outside a gloomy-looking hotel with the outskirts of a big city. Dudley and Harry shared a room with twin beds and the damp, musty sheets. Dudley snored, but Harry stayed awake, sitting on the windowsill, staring down at the lights, passing cars of wondering. They ate stale cornflakes and cold-tinted tomatoes on toast for breakfast the next day. They had just finished when the owner of the hotel came over to the table. Excuse me, but is one of you Mr. H. Potter? I only got about 100 of these at the front desk. She held up a letter so they could read the green ink and address. Harry made a grab for the letter, but Uncle Ron knocked his hand out of the way. The woman stared. I'll take them, said Uncle Ron, standing up quickly, following her to the dining room. Wouldn't it be better just to go home, dear? Aunt Petunia suggested with a timidly hours later, but Uncle Ron didn't seem to hear her. Exactly what he was looking for. None of them knew. He drove them into the middle of the forest, got out, looked around, shook his head, got back in the car, and they were off again. The same thing happened in the middle of the plowed field, halfway across the suspension board at the top of the multi-level parking garage. Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he? Dudley asked Aunt Petunia. Dudley late in the afternoon. Uncle Ron had parked at the coast, locked them all inside the car, and disappeared. Started to rain. Great drops beat on the roof of the car. Dudley sniffled. It's Monday, he told his mother. The great umbrella song tonight. I want to see someone with a television. Monday, he reminded Harry of something. If it was Monday, and you usually count on Dudley to know the days of the week because of television, then tomorrow, Tuesday, was Harry's 11th birthday. Of course, his birthdays were never exactly fun. Last year, the Dursleys gave him a coat hanger and a pair of Uncle Ron's old socks. Still, you weren't 11 every day. Uncle Ron was back. When Uncle Ron was back and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thin package and didn't answer Aunt Petunia when he asked for what he'd bought. Found the perfect place, he said. Come on, everyone out. It was very cold outside. Uncle Ron was pointing at looks like a large rock out in the sea, perched on top of the rock. The most miserable little shack you could imagine. One thing was certain. There was no television up there. Storm forecast for the night. Uncle Ron said gleefully, clapping his hands together. And this gentleman's kindly agreed to lend us this boat. A toothless old man came out, ambling up to them, pointing with a rather wicked grin at an old rowboat bobbing up in the iron grey. I've already got her some rations, said Uncle Ron, so I'm aboard. It was freezing on the boat. Icy sea sprayed, the rain crept down on their necks, and a chilly wind whipped their faces. After what seemed like hours, they reached the rock, where Uncle Ron, slipping and sliding, led away to the broken-down house. Inside it was horrible. It smelled strongly of seaweed. The wind whistled through the gaps of the wooden walls, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There were only 2 rooms. Uncle Ron's rations turned out to be a bag of chips each and 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire but the empty chip bag just smoked and chilled out. Could do something with those letters now, eh? He said cheerfully. He was in a good mood, obviously. He thought nobody stood a chance reaching them here in a storm to deliver mail. Harry privately agreed, though he didn't. The thought didn't cheer him up at all. As night fell, the promised storm blew up around them, spraying from the highway, splattered the walls of the hut, and a fierce wind rattled the filthy windows. Aunt Petunia found a few moldy blankets in the second room, and made a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa. He and Uncle Ron went off to the lumpy bed next door. Harry was left to find the softest bit of floor he could, curl up under the thinnest, most ragged, hardened blanket. The storm raged more and more furiously as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to get comfortable. His stomach rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned out by the loud roars of thunder that started near midnight. The light dial of Dudley's watch, which was dangling over the edge of the sofa on his fat wrist, told Harry he'd be 11 in 10 minutes' time. He lay and watched his birthday tick nearer, wondering if the Dursleys would remember it all, wondering where the letter writer was now. 5 minutes ago, Harry heard something creak outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall, and maybe he might be warmer for dinner. 4 minutes ago. Maybe the house on Private Drive would be so full of letters when they got back. He'd be able to steal one somehow. 3 minutes ago. Was that the sea slapping hard on the rock like that? And 2 minutes ago. What was that funny crunching noise? Was it the rock crumbling in the sea? 1 minute ago. And he'd be 11. 30 seconds. 20, 10, 9. Maybe he'd waked up Dudley up just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1, boom. The whole shack shivered and Harry sat bolted upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside knocking to come in. that is the end of chapter 4, guys. See you in the next video. Bye.